If you were around the anime community around a decade ago, you've heard this ending before. It's been parodied by many on YouTube, and the fan animations just show so much love. However, despite how well known the ending is, I never hear people talk about the show itself. Which is a shame because it's one of my favorite animes of all time. It's so wacky, stylish, and over the top, it's nearly impossible not to fall in love with the series. Now, if you're still wondering what the series is, let me be the first to introduce you to a little anime known as Blockade Battlefront, or Kekai Sensen, if that's your preference. My name is Ryan, and welcome to A and B Revealed. And today we'll be talking about the blood powers within Blockade Battlefront. As per usual, some caveats. I won't be trying to explain anything ludicrous like how their blood powers work. I'm assuming you're familiar with the series by this point. My main focus today is going to see how Zap may be able to set his blood on fire. So, to begin with, let's of course start with the biology of the blood. Now, blood is a rather fascinating liquid. It's made up of 4 primary components. First, there's plasma. No, not that type of plasma. The liquid type that makes up the fluid portion of the blood. That's it. Now, plasma is rather mundane, actually. It is mainly water with a mixture of different biomolecules within it, such as protein. Next component we have are the white blood cells, or leukocytes. Ah yes, perfect. Cells at work can help me illustrate things. Now, white blood cells are fairly accurately depicted within the show. Not Blockade Battlefront, this one here, which is known as cells at work. Not that they run around with knives hunting germs, but the fact that they flow through the blood phagocytizing foreign bodies, which just so happen to be germs more often than not. White blood cells serve as a primary line of defense for your immune system, and of course, there are varying layers to the immune system, such as killer T cells, B cells, dendrocytes, macrophages, just to name a few. Though, out of all of these, it's mainly your white blood cells that end up patrolling the bloodstream on a regular basis. After the white blood cells, we have our next component, which are known as platelets, and if we want to be fancy again, thrombocytes. These help with coagulation. Coagulation is a term that means it's a process by which blood thickens in order to prevent blood loss. They're not going to be so important for this theory, so let's move on to our last component. And that is, of course, the main attraction when it comes to the blood. And that is your erythrocyte. What, you don't know what that is? It's, of course, your red blood cells. Now, red blood cells are what we're going to focus on for the remainder of this video. I'd like to see if it's possible for Zap to light this blood on fire, and the RBCs seem to be the most promising possibility. Am I allowed to say RBCs? You know, red blood cells. So then, let's break down the red blood cell and see what exactly it might contain that is set as on... It's oxygen. We all know it's oxygen. I don't know why I'm trying to build this up like it's some big mystery. Yes, we all know oxygen binds to the red blood cell and is carried throughout the bloodstream to various portions of our bodies, and that oxygen is required for fire, so... naturally, that's where I'll lean towards to help support this theory. However, do you know how oxygen binds to the red blood cell to begin with? You don't? Great, let's talk about that. Some of you may be familiar with the term hemoglobin. If not, that's alright because we're about to discuss it. Hemoglobin is a protein found within red blood cells, and one of the main characteristics is the fact that it contains iron. Now, the protein itself isn't made entirely of iron, but more specifically, it holds iron ions available and ready for oxygen binding. Additionally, this iron is what is generally responsible for the red color we see within these cells. More specifically, when this iron is bound to oxygen, which, if you know that process at all, produces rust, which is a reddish color. Not that our red blood cells are producing rust, it's just iron and oxygen produce rust, and when exposed to nature, it's a similar process in the blood. Not exactly the same. Our blood is not rust. That's not what I'm saying. So if our red blood cells contain iron and oxygen, how can these contribute to how Zap can set it on fire? To discuss that, we need to delve into the physics of fire. Fire, simply put, is a series of rapid redox reactions, which is a fancy way of saying the exchange of electrons. At this point, I'm going to assume you understand the makeup of an atom, the electrons, protons, and neutrons and their characteristics, because I don't want to insult your intelligence by explaining something so basic. So, electrons are the driving force behind fire. Let's break it down a bit more. So, given fuel, an oxidizing agent, and energy, these factors together allow for fire to become a continuous exchange of electrons that give off energy and light. Essentially, what's happening are electrons are moving from planes of higher energy to lower energy, which is what provides the heat and the light. And given enough fuel and oxidizing agent, this process will continue once started. Now, I've mentioned the term oxidizing agent a couple times. Let me explain what that means. Firstly, it doesn't necessarily mean oxygen, despite being in the name itself. An oxidizing agent is simply an atom that accepts electrons in a chemical reaction. And oxygen is one of the greediest atoms on the periodic table, meaning it wants electrons more than any other element, with the sole exception being fluorine. Since it is readily abundant in nature, oxygen serves as the oxidizing agent in a myriad of chemical reactions. As such, oxidation was named after oxygen. With this in mind, it's easy to understand why oxygen serves as the main facilitator of the exchange of electrons within combustion reactions. Now back to Zap and lighting his blood on fire, it seems to be a rather straightforward process. Since Zap has full control over his blood and can manipulate it to take various shapes, it would not be hard to assume that he could remove the water portion of plasma out of his blood blades. As such, the material of his blades would be dry and ready to ignite. Since it is an organic material, it would theoretically burn. So he simply lights his lighter and utilizes that flame to incite a series of redox reactions from the oxygen from his blood. Now, the important thing to note is that it would burn, but it would do so quickly and not for a prolonged time like a log fire. However, this is exactly what is portrayed within the series itself. Zap ignites his blood and it instantly burns up. I'm not sure if that was intentional by the animators, but it does add a bit of validity to my hypothesis. To be fair, it would require a much higher concentration of oxygen in the blood, which he may be able to provide since he can manipulate it so well. So yeah, to summarize, I hypothesize that Zap manipulates his blood to remove the water portion of it, making it dry and ready to burn when he's about to light it. Additionally, he ups the concentration of oxygen in that portion of the blood to enhance its combustibility. And there we have it. Now, I think we've gotten to the point where I don't need to keep stipulating that this isn't how things would work in the real world. I'm sure you're all intelligent enough to put that together yourselves. But let me know what you think. Anything else I should have mentioned about blood or fire? In the meantime, I'd like to see how fast I can get this next video out. Take care, everybody, and God bless.